online probably in the next year. So schools are starting to respond. And I tell you that the students are responding to it too, and then they're filling those programs full. So carpentry, cabinet making, HVAC, electrical, all those things.
Good. Welding.
Yeah.
I'm going to make a comment because 20 years ago I was in that business in higher education, and I'm going to call on Steve. At American University in Washington, D.C., and my job was to coordinate all these various people to make sure that we went out to the businesses and said, what do you need, and here's the ways we can help to fill that. It's a fascinating job, but it was extraordinarily difficult. Come on in. Hi. Good to see you, Carl. Because things change so quickly, and trying to train people for a particular job, it's probably true even in the construction trades. The skills and the materials change enough that you are constantly playing catch up. That's a difficult thing to do for higher education, especially. Steve,
are there any new industries that you guys have talked about that it's not cybersecurity, it's not tourism, but anything kind of out of the box?
Marijuana.
We talk about it all the time.
Well, is that a yeah?
Green industries pop up periodically as a potential. RBA has a list of 5 key industries, and I apologize, I don't have them.
Nothing new. Like honest, I think green does come up a lot. There's sustainability components. I think you're also seeing a little bit more drive towards social aspects of businesses, and so you're seeing, the SBDC actually with the BBB is kind of creating a whole program that caters towards businesses. Yes, you're making a profit, but you're also doing something for the good of the community or for your fellow people with those profit dollars. And so you're seeing, especially with millennial generations, kind of using that as a barometer for who they do business with. And that's actually sometimes more important than the product itself in a lot of ways. So there's a lot of push around that just as a trend. Yeah, but other than that, that's.
We're currently, we're unfortunate in that we don't have any rail service in our region, and we're looking at trying to figure out how to change that. We're uniquely situated in that we do have 2 lines running along I-25, and it's a dual served. It's a little technical for me. So, but we do have a really good spot, we think, where we can encourage that type of activity. And we think an industrial served rail yard in the south part of the county has some possibilities. It's very, very expensive to explore that option. And we've started with a first study that there were no fatal flaws found, at least. So we're going to try to take it to the next level, which entails a larger feasibility study. And one of the things we're looking at, and you'll see it on your sheet there, is we'd like to undertake a comprehensive economic development strategy. A CEDS is what it's called. And that will allow us to access economic development administration dollars. In the past, we didn't qualify for any of that. You have to be somewhat economically more challenged than we are. But we think there are some opportunities there.
Thank you.
we had a question here, and then Jim.
Yeah, my question was around some of the externalities that can come with certain forms of renewal. So like, I live in the Venetian Village neighborhood, for example, and looking at the history of that neighborhood is very fascinating. When I see, what it was 50 years ago, and now with the result of, this large strip of fast food restaurants and warehouses sort of around the perimeter of our neighborhood, resulting in severe social determinants of bad healthy outcomes. So I'm just kind of curious about like this sort of, with the Urban Renewal Authority, what steps are taken to ensure, when we look at a business renewal plan, or, is this renewal plan to, build a very nice fast food joint that's strategically placed next to a high school that will provide 10 jobs, that does have $1 million investment, but there are severe, I work obviously in a nonprofit, you can tell. But like, I see a huge obesity epidemic that's costing our nation billions of dollars, right? So I see that as a huge economic disincentive. So, and I think that my question is just around what steps are taken with the Urban Renewal Authority, looking at the social consequences of certain forms of development. Like I look at the North Nevada Revitalization Project, work on the South Nevada, and the work in downtown, which is very exciting, and I'm really excited about it. And I also have serious concerns looking ahead in our city in the next 10 years of processes of gentrification in, the Shooks Run neighborhood, in the Stratton Meadows neighborhood, in my neighborhood. And I really want to know, and I think there's a lot of us in this city that are very curious of what steps are being taken on the Urban Renewal Authority Board for really understanding the externalities of development and ensuring, community stakeholder input.
You know what's funny? I literally, Brandon Del Grosso with Switchback Coffee and I were actually having a conversation about this. I think it was just a couple of weeks ago. Right now, there really is no official mechanism in place for that. Really, what I would say for anybody that feels passionate about development or what goes on in the area is really to take part in the public process. All of those avenues that you mentioned have public components to them. And when you have enough people who say something or believe in something, it gets heard. But it definitely needs to be said around the table. I think that's an important piece of the process. I think too, when we look at the southeast side, we look at development on the southeast side. Over the years, we've seen a lot of, medical marijuana or pawn shops or, things of this sort. And I know you've been involved with that Southeast El Pomar Possibilities Grant, which I'm involved with too. So trying to kind of bring some more economic sense around that whole area. And I think it's an important component. It really is. The sad truth is, though, no matter what, is that we are going to look at. We need something there. I would rather, I would rather have something that at least drives dollars to the community there than an abandoned building or something that's contributing to further blight in a neighborhood. Now, if I had my pick, yeah, I'd rather it be a Whole Foods, or I'd rather it be something more, a healthy choice place from a personal component. But, the city has to not only, we can't just pick things that we want personally. We have to be responsible with those dollars and bring money back into, the city as well. And so it's a balance. It's a delicate balance as far as what you do there. But I really appreciate the comment. I do.
You didn't mention sports medicine and the branding of Colorado Springs with the
huge.
Olympics. To me, that is one of the least, the thing that we have not taken as much advantage of. And credit to Mayor Southers and the city for actually branding us with the USOC, but I think there's a whole industry that can be developed around that.
Sports, when you look at the UCCS medical component of the C4C, projects, when you talk about something that could be the Mayo Clinic of sports medicine, and when you talk about medical tourism and the cool component of that going back to this community, bringing in people to be treated for tuberculosis, and that historical anchor, towards this new technology in sports medicine and the great things that we're doing there, plus the Olympic brand, absolutely, it's definitely, again, with, military, cyber, sports, those things are things that we do well. And so we will continue to capitalize on that. You'll only see that go up over the years moving forward, and that's something that we're laser focused on, for sure.
And we had a question back here.
Just following up on this gentleman's question about externalities, your defense of economic development, Ryan, bringing something where there's nothing. Would things be different if the legislation that authorizes counties and cities to negotiate for economic development required weighing of those externalities, then your job would be simple, right? You just have to take into account the social consequences of strip mall development, or whatever the engine is that creates these third-party costs. And if I understand you're from your answers that nothing in economic development laws requires the agencies administering those dollars to take into account those costs. That's more or less correct.
Yeah, and I think the, and I'm gonna give you kind of a different perspective on what you said there, and maybe a reason why is because you have to be careful if you put too much rules and regulations on things, if you put too much things in place, then the free market, so to speak, takes that business and just will go somewhere else with it. And sometimes there's not that component to come in behind it and to say, okay, if the strip mall doesn't go in, or if the fast food restaurant X doesn't go in, we have this to go in its place. And that's really the missing argument when someone comes in and says, I don't want this going here. Well then, okay, what do you want going there? And is that project gonna be right around the corner if we let this project go? And oftentimes, it's not. It's just not there. It sounds good on paper, or it looks good on paper, but it's not in place. And so that's the tough component about it. But if somebody were to come in and say, hey, I've got a company that wants to take this is what they'll do, and we can come in right behind this and actually pose a choice of a certain location and the businesses that go there, that might be a different story.
And I think this lady in the blue polo shirt.
Given that the Pikes Peak is a huge tourism draw, is there any programs available that would help pay for the Summit House?
To pay for the
Summit House. Summit House.
So there's, matter of fact, Mayor Southers just talked about the Summit House at his State of the City address last week. There are, that is something that really, when you go up there, it's just not to the caliber of what we want. So there will be a push to get some funding to that as well. I think right now we're in the midst of, between the Springs Rescue Mission and between everything that's going on, there's a lot of capital campaigns in the community right now, just in general. But that is something that is going to be a top priority of the mayor during his, for the rest of his current term.
But is there any economic development incentives that would help pay for that? It's when tourists come here, they come here partly because of Pikes Peak.
Absolutely.
I think there are a couple of opportunities, economic development EDA dollars perhaps.
Yeah.
Don't necessarily want to say that the enterprise zone could help, but conceivably it could, because now we have to go back and look at that. Yeah.
And you have so many other people who'd like to be part of it.
And the state right now is very concerned about the proliferation of enterprise zone projects. It takes away from state revenues. So the Economic Development Commission is actually tasking all of us to really fine tune those projects. And for us though, I think tourism is a natural fit for those types of projects. So we're just gonna have to be really focused on how we develop our enterprise zone plan going forward, as well as the Office of Economic Development and International Trade has suggested to us all that you really need to have enterprise zone potential projects in your blueprint. This is a statewide program, Blueprint 2.0, and I think we will see that resurface a little bit. We have not worked on that for 2 years now, but I anticipate that we will actually, I might use you, Dave, to help get the word out that we need some participation in developing that blueprint or refining it. And you know, oftentimes we have these groups, people aren't really excited, so I'm thrilled to see this many people here, really, to be honest. It would be nice to have more involvement in that, so I will rely on you.
Happy to do it. Jim?
Okay, I'd like to piggyback on what Jim was talking about as far as the role of government. My first question would be, what avenue is your north-south that starts the southeast?
So we define that the city from like Maysland area going all the way to Hancock and Proby. That's kind of like the general, if you can kind of draw a rectangle around that, but that's what we're
Would
looking
Shook's
at.
Run be incorporated in that, since that run is a long run going
Shook's Run
from
is, so,
south-north?
so no, it doesn't fall within that boundary, but we still look at Shook's Run as being a piece of that area too, but not officially, no, it doesn't.
No, because I believe that it is the government's role to maybe turn heads and move people forward to what is best for the city, rather than, you know, having a lot of folks who have different ideas. But I consider the Shook's Run area near downtown. If you want to develop a good downtown, I can't see how you can't come in to the Shook's Run area and gentrify, what's the word?
Gentrify.
Yeah, that whole area, going from Wasatch up to Union, and starting, you know, maybe back to Pikes Peak, or Platte, I'm sorry, from Platte over to Fountain. Okay, you know, that's to me is a near downtown area, and to talk about developing downtown and not dealing in what's around downtown just doesn't make sense to me. So in the training.
What June raises a very important point. You want gentrification because you're bringing in the young professionals and you're raising the economic level, but you've got to address the workforce housing issue.
You gotta have an affordable component.
And we always talk about it and always talk about it. We really need to address that in some meaningful way.
I have a question just alongside that. So it's very important that obviously as citizens we be civically engaged, but we also have to be met halfway too. So I'm curious, the Urban Renewal Authority, one of their goals is to facilitate affordable housing, but I'm curious, on the board of directors, is there any individuals on that board who are actively working and have a lot of experience in affordable housing?
I don't know the Urban Renewal Board particularly well, but there are, you know, I do know a few who understand affordable housing. Also, if there is an opportunity for that board to take experts, I think they do. There's actually the Southeast, Southwest Urban Renewal, there's Southwest. They're really delving into this a little bit and asking for experts on certain areas to attend those meetings specific to those topics.
I can comment a
Oh,
little
good.
bit about that. The Urban Renewal Board, at least a few years ago, saw itself solely as a tool. It is a way of generating revenues to revitalize an area, and it had a lot to do with public infrastructure, etc. The plan is the document in which you can do the kind of creative things that people are commenting about. The board doesn't see itself as a real activist in formulating that plan. They really take the developer's ideas and make sure that it complies, but it can be a very effective force in molding some of those community ideas. Obviously, affordable housing is critical, and there is an affordable housing component, but it's not the driver. And it could be a lot better, and the board needs to change its culture, its mindset, and the city needs to decide how it's going to use it. There's a kind of an interesting relationship because the Urban Renewal Board is independent. They're appointed by the mayor, but basically, other than approving or not approving the plan, the Urban Renewal Board can do an awful lot of things. But it basically gets down to city council saying yes or no to first identifying the urban renewal area and secondly approving the plan. And so politically, there's a forum there for these kinds of issues. I think your comment was, the public needs to raise those issues and make demands.
And I think, you know, and again, we all have to be careful. It's a board that, throwing my personal opinion out the window, it really doesn't matter because, you know, that board is appointed. And it's had some past administration appointments, you know, on there as well. It's not even all of Mayor Southers hasn't appointed to that. So there definitely is, you know, room though for public, and there is a forum there for public to have their voice heard. I think it's a component. So is the affordable housing piece. I do think that the reason why we see issues with affordable housing in some of these areas is because frankly, you can make a little bit more money building something that's not in the affordable housing range. And so it becomes one of those issues where I have a real estate background and you know, some of that, and it is a daunting task. It costs a lot of money to put in some of these projects. And I'd be lying if I didn't say that I've lost sleep at night before on the private side, going, boy, I've got paychecks coming up, I've got things I've got to do. Any added risk to that process is extremely inhibiting of putting in something that's in my opinion.
It really has to be a community policy
Yeah.
as opposed to the Urban Renewal Board creating affordable housing. They can be a tool to do it, but I don't think they can create the policy. Because if you are going to generate new job opportunities and you don't generate affordable housing for that workforce, you've really lost the link. And if people have to drive for security, that's a cost to them that they shouldn't have to bear.
And in line with that, for those of you who are interested in following this conversation up, which I think you've done a great job of pushing in the right direction, Jay. We're having a lunch talk with Merv Bennett on September 19th. That's this coming Monday. So come with comments and questions for that too. I think that, and I know Merv is looking forward to having that sort of conversation with us. I'm going to call on this young lady.
I work in affordable housing, so very opportune that I can ask this question. But on the development division sheet at the bottom about facts and stats, it's talking about the turnkey single-family loan program. Could you talk a little bit about that? And recently I saw something in the paper talking about how Color Springs is about a 5.5% vacancy rate, and so is really the push for home ownership, or is there a push for more apartment buildings, or where is that sort of going?
Any and all.
Okay.
I don't know that we're focused really on one or the other. Home ownership, El Paso County has been involved in programs that promote home ownership since 1979. I don't know if you've all heard of the bond program from years ago, which we no longer really can do because markets aren't very favorable to us on that. But the County Housing Authority put together what we call our turnkey program about 3 years ago. And you don't need to be a first-time homebuyer to use this program. We have about 50 participating lenders who originate FHA, VA, and conventional loans. And with those loans comes a grant in the amount of 4% of the loan to help with down payment cost. It does not have to be repaid. There is the interest rate is a touch higher. I mean, it's being generated somehow. However, it's not significant. The 4% is, again, a grant. It's a great program, I think, just because it doesn't take me a lot of work. And lenders do all the work for us, and they have done a great job with it. They really have. In addition, we have a mortgage credit certificate program that is available to those purchasers that provides a federal income tax credit for the interest that they pay on their loan, and really to promote home ownership. The rental market, we also can play a role in, and that's through the issuance of tax-exempt bonds that, along with those bonds comes a federal income tax credit, low-income housing tax credit, to provide some equity to those projects. So we have probably 2,600 units that were constructed in that manner. We're looking, the most recent one would have been, if you're familiar with Copper Creek, it's on Airport near Sand Creek. Great looking project, very, very attractive. I don't think if you looked at it, you would go, oh my gosh, affordable housing. And so the misnomer that affordable housing needs to look like a project is just really not there. So those are tools, but as Jariah mentioned, developing housing is brain damage. I don't envy any developer who really has to do that. Even if it's a market rate project, my gosh, all the entitlements, the loan. You throw the affordable piece into it, now you have to deal with the IRS, you get to deal with me, you get to deal with the county commissioners. It's not fun. I admire developers who pull it off.
Speaking of developers, I thought you had your.
Well, I was just, I've dealt with several of the projects that are looking at downtown for apartments, and every single one of them has affordable housing as part of it. There is a significant financial incentive to make affordable housing part of the housing projects that are coming up. So I think, you know, there's already legislation in place. And I do have to say, on the state level, with the defects legislation that's in place as a builder, nobody will touch building a bunch of condos, which would be perfect for the affordable housing component. But it's this Colorado legislation that makes me responsible for any defect for the rest of my life. I can't get insurance for that, so I can't build it.
And I'm the insurance agent that sells those policies, and they are expensive. So you get a lot of guys that they have the opportunity to get something started, but the cost is just, you know, too unbearable.
Yeah.
And on a side note, and then this gentleman has a question. With regard to that, the HBA, the Regional Business Alliance in Kono, and I think the Pikes Peak Association of Realtors all got in front of City Council a while back and said, we've got to do something about this, because it's just too hard to get affordable housing built in this community, and we really need it. And we've got to find a way to lighten that burden somehow.
And even though the city may have adopted something that overrides, it doesn't, I don't think. And there really are concerns. It needs to be a statewide change.
Yeah.
Mm.
I think that was more along the line of, let's see if we can't break this logjam. So I guess we're talking to you, Pete.
Yeah, yeah, directly.
Sorry, Pete.
And you have a question?
I have a comment and a question. I don't know how much of the rental housing stock consists of people that have invested in one or two or more rental houses near their home. I've been one of those since 1994. And affordable housing, as it's defined numerically in this town, is impossible. By the time you pay the mortgage, repair it after you accidentally rented to savages, you know, it's impossible to get the rent down and keep it going. The other question is, what happened to the Affordable Housing Commission? We used to, I was on it, me and Leslie Cook and realtors and bankers and so on. It just kind of went away. Our phone stopped ringing. We stopped being invited to meetings.
I think I was on that with you.
Yes. And it just kind of evaporated several years ago. What happened?
From what I understand, mind you, I was just a member also on the city's affordable housing group, and really it was put together to advise the city on CDBG usages, or at home, federal dollars, and the city took a different approach and is no longer utilizing that group.
And Amy Cox would be the one that probably to bring that in. Is Amy speaking on one of these? Is Amy Cox? Okay. If you give me your card, I'll or give me your number.
Yeah,
I'll get
it would have been nice just to say, you know,
sure,
we're not doing this anymore. Thank you for your service. I was like, you know,
sure,
what happened?
Sure. Can't believe you're there.
Robert, I think you had a question.
Yes, on the city's strategic plan that's underway or getting underway, I was wondering what your inputs might be, if you might anticipate sort of your top inputs to the city's strategic plan, whether it's city question or housing or whatever.
What I'm citing?
Inputs, you know, your office might have an opportunity to provide inputs to the city's strategic plan, or comprehensive plan? Sorry, comprehensive plan. I'm wondering what your inputs might, if you anticipate what you might be providing as a recommendation.
Well, you know, it's funny, Jay actually walked in here, having looked up his hand. The Plan COS effort, you know, is underway right now. And I know that Jay would love to talk to anybody in here that would want to talk about it offline, about how to fill out the surveys, et cetera. I personally think that it is critical for this plan. Jay, when was the last time the plan, 2001? Yeah. So 2001 was the last time that plan has been updated. I personally think from a citizen's perspective, it's a map or a plan to what we do moving